Guys, I think we need to come to the realization that we are watching the worst version of the Sacramento Kings era, or ever. And honestly, we may be seeing the worst version of the Kings as a franchise, period, from when they were called the Royals and all the relocations, period. Like, this team is genuinely that bad. And the season we always had to compare it to was, oh, it's bad, but at least it wasn't 2008, 2009, right? Where the Kings won just 17 games that year. Kayla, they are on pace. The Kings are on pace to win 17 games right now. And like it's ugly. It's bad. It's not good. And I could make an argument, truthfully, I could make an argument that 2008, 2009 team was more fun to watch, was more enjoyable, and was in a at least better situation than this team is right now in terms of talent and finances and everything. Now, they didn't do a good job because after that season where they won 17 games, they had 6 straight seasons where they didn't even reach 30 wins. Like 6 straight seasons in the 20s. Like that, they were bad and stayed bad. Right?
There was like no rebuilding of an obvious rebuild.
Well, that's because they had 4 consecutive drafts where they not only made a bad pick, a future Hall of Famer was picked immediately after them.
And that's the worry. I think that's the worry for fans right now.
Yeah.
Like, even with the draft we have coming up, there's still all of this that comes back to haunt you as a Kings fan.
Yep.
Of, oh, crap, even if we get to the draft and we're anxious for the draft and we get to pick even number 1 overall, what if Darren Peterson is a guy that just never plays because he's got this attitude problem and issues with his health or whatever it might be? Like, I understand the haunting feelings you have, and this is a prime example of stuff like that.
At the time, the NBA lottery system was not what it is right now, meaning the top 3 or bottom 3 teams have the same odds. It was the Kings were the worst team in the league that year. And they had the top odds at the number 1 overall pick, which was Blake Griffin. Well, they dropped as far as they could drop to number 4 when they took Tyreek Evans. Well, there was a guy named Steph Curry on the board as well. But regardless...
and Ricky Rubio.
Yes. Yeah. Well, Ricky Rubio would have not been a good pick either. Ricky Rubio had a fine career in Minnesota, but didn't do anything either. Regardless, like it went about as bad as it possibly could in the draft for them. Tyreek Evans won Rookie of the Year the next year, 25-5, hooray! And it was fun at the moment, but that team didn't matter. And then Tyreek was never good really after that, and never progressed, and then got busted for pretty bad drug stuff later in his career outside of Sacramento. Regardless, like the lesson you can learn from that team is, hey, you have to dig out of the hole or climb out of the hole. You can't just sit there and wait for it to automatically fix things. But that roster that year had like Kevin Martin was young scorer in his prime or entering his prime, averaging 24 points per game, 25 years old. You still had Bobby Jackson and Brad Miller that year as kind of the last pieces, the last lights from the glory era of the early 2000s. So you at least had that kind of fan nostalgia element to it.
Hey, that's like Domas and Malik.
I wouldn't say so. That was 1 year compared to like it's the same idea, but 1 year of good Beam team versus like multiple years of the Kings were really, really good, and Bobby and Brad were such a big part of that. Bubble B. Bano was a bucket. Bano Udrich. I loved Bano. The Bano Drano is
how old were you when this team was?
Let's see, 2008, 2009. So I was a freshman in high school.
Okay, gotcha.
Right? Or this might have been either 8th grade or freshman year of high school.
Okay. I just wanted the perspective of how you were obviously knowing what was going on.
Right.
It was still
I remember it being awful.
Yeah.
I remember going and seeing John Salmons and Andres Nocioni, who I think got busted for like a DUI or something here in Sacramento too when he was here. This was not a good team.
Bano was a bucket.
Bano was a bucket. They did have some interesting rookies in Jason Thompson and Dante Green. Jason Thompson was a lottery pick, and Jason Thompson ended up being like one of the top Kings of all time statistically, at least in terms of longevity, because he played for so long while they were terrible. He never won anything here in Sacramento, but he played for a long time in Sacramento.
Does he have the games record?
I think he I don't know if he still does, but he did at the time. I don't know if he still does if De'Aaron passed him. Regardless, like there's arguments I can make. You're comparing garbage to garbage. Mm-hmm. There's arguments that I could make, though, that the Kings were in a better position at that time to move forward than they're in right now with the contracts that they have.
Sure.
And certainly that roster is not nearly as talented as the roster that the Sacramento Kings have right now.
That was my biggest question.
And this team is, again, quite possibly the worst in franchise history, period.
And I think it's a mixture of not only is this roster full of individual talent, but that never really worked together on the court, but the talent that you wanted to see work together on the court has not been on the court together at the same time. So it's been like this hodgepodge of insanity when it comes to this season. Hasn't worked. And I guess we're at now the point that it's just like throw the young players out there, and you could have nights like you did against the Cavs, or you could have nights against the Pelicans that we just saw, because that's what happens with youth when it's inconsistent. But this, for me, I didn't see that team. I didn't grow up here. So you explaining this to me is interesting, because I do feel like this has a lot of individual talent. It's just crazy that at no point it's really worked.
Well, and this was also at a time where the Maloofs were at the end of their ownership tenure, and money was tight. They weren't exactly spending money. And one thing to the credit of Vivek Ranadive, like one thing he's never shied away from is spending the money necessary to build this team. The problem is he hasn't made the best of investments in the team necessarily, but the money has always been there. And this team is extremely expensive and terrible.
And really bad. And that's
you're
what
stuck
hurts.
with some of them.
Yeah.
Like, you're just straight stuck with them.
You can't just get rid of some of these guys that you know for a fact do not fit. And they know for a fact, Zach LaVine, that they don't fit. And it's just, it's the worst of both worlds.
The one thing that where history can't repeat itself is, like we talked about, that we're hoping this season, as terrible as it is, and again, it might end up being the worst in the history of the franchise. This season has to be the start of the upswing. And while technically that 17-win season in 2008-2009 was rock bottom in terms of they lost more games than they ever had before, they didn't grow out of it. They didn't go anywhere. The last 2 years of that 6 straight streak of seasons where they were in the 20s, the last 2 years, by the way, belonged to Vivek Ranadive. Like, that's how long Vivek's been around now at this point.
Wow.
So there was the whole relocation saga and the Seattle scare and the sale, and everything happened during that stretch. But the last 2 years of that team that still couldn't break 30 wins belongs to Vivek Ranadive. And you have to, if you're Scott Perry, anybody, you're not responsible for that history by any means. But Kings fans are scarred by that history, and this has to be the start. I'm not saying next year you have to win 40 games or even 30 games, but we can't get 5-6 straight seasons of being bad for that long.
Okay, so what was I want to go back to that season, and you said it never was really torn down because it didn't really need to be.
Right.
What was the factor of why they were so bad then, even if there were...
They just weren't talented.
Yeah.
Like
they didn't have the mind. They weren't they were selling, they were doing there was all this other stuff going on that it wasn't like.
They didn't spend money. Like the Maloofs weren't spending money. Like Kevin Martin was the only thing close to a star that they had. And
they
Kevin
didn't
Martin
water the garden.
He was a fantastic shooter, but that was about it. Like, he could score.
I saw a stat years ago that was like the gap between the Kings and 29th in spending that season was the gap between team 29 and team like 22 or something like that.
Yeah, they just didn't spend money.
And that'll do it.
They didn't have talent like John Salmons. John Salmons, nice guy, but is a running joke here in Sacramento of, if like you're the John Salmons of the Kings, it means you're not very good. It was a poorly constructed team. It was a team to be bad. Like Quincy Doobie was in his second season. Quincy Doobie was bad. Spencer Hawes was on this team. You mentioned that name in Sacramento. Seattle guy.
Yeah,
Spencer
I know.
Hawes.
Spencer Hawes,
You mentioned him in Sacramento, and everybody cringes.
They're like, no.
Nobody likes him right now. So the draft picks were bad. Okay. Kevin Martin was the closest thing you had to a young star, and to be fair, he was around right at the end of that playoff era. He had the famous game winner against the San Antonio Spurs in 2006. But like there just wasn't a direction. There wasn't anything. And I would argue.
So you feel better. You feel better as a lifelong Sacramento King fan right now about at least there's a direction.
No.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
I think I feel worse because the expectations plus the talent on this roster for them to be this bad compared to that team that we knew at the time. We knew going into Arco Arena, we knew we were watching a bad team, and we were hoping that Blake Griffin would be a King next season. Just like some of us might be hoping that AJ DeBonsa or Darren Peterson is a King next season. But regardless, coming into this season, we were looking at this roster as, hey, maybe compete for a play-in and just wait it out. Now, I'm glad the Kings are in the position that they are because it opens people's eyes to, like, we need to rebuild. But comparing these two teams, there's no way this year's team should be nearly as bad or anywhere close to that team. And they're on the same, they're on the pace to win the same amount of games, 17 games. Yeah. Which is insane.
It's bad.
Given the circumstances. But, hey.
At least they're not selling the team, though.
That's true.
You do have that. I'm not trying to be like.
No, that's true. They're here. We don't have to worry about that part. We don't have to. Off the court mattered more than on the court at that time. Right now, on the court really matters, and on the court, as we saw last night, is
bad.
Terrible. Yeah. It's really, really bad.